Hello and welcome. My name is Nate Cap, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Outcasting, where I'm sharing bits of science towards freedom. Today, I'd like to share with you something that I refer to as the Trivium of Ignorance. And this is basically just the inverted version of the trivium learning process. So you could also call it the inverted trivium. And what I'm endeavoring to do on this show is basically just break down the word ignorance and get into the behaviors that are associated with ignorance so that way we have a better understanding of what this word, what the behavior of this word means within ourselves and within everyone else. So that way we can actually do something about it, because by becoming conscious of it, we can actually transmute that darker side of ourselves into light. We can actually take what is out of focus and put it into focus. Have a higher definition, understanding of this behavior and this word, and that way we can, go move forward in a more evolutionary direction. Okay, so what truly is ignorance? And I think this is such an important question that we really need to ask ourselves very deeply, because it's not just to not know something. Okay, there's more to it, and I think if we really pay attention to this word and what is associated with it, then I think we're going to have a more of an understanding of who we truly are. And this is about doing the shadow work. This is about understanding our dark side and what we can actually do about it. So, one thing I want to talk about before we go any further is this idea um, that, ignorance is bliss. And I just want to be very clear, okay? It is definitely not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. And we really have to get this idea out of our mind. This idea that ignorance is bliss, it's an illusion of what true happiness really is, of what bliss really is. Okay? And I'm going to get into this in the end of the video a little more, but we have to understand that bliss, being ignorance, is basically like saying that you can just, keep your head in the sand with your ass in the air. And as long as you don't know about anything, as long as you are not thinking about anything that is, negative in the world, where people are suffering and how the human condition actually is, then you're not responsible for that, right? And you're happy about that. You're happy that you don't know anything, and therefore, just drink all you want, smoke all you want, play endless video games, watch lots of porn, watch tons of movies, watch news endlessly, and just completely be oblivious to what is truly going on in the world, and therefore you're happy. And that's not to say that you can't actually feel happy. I'm talking about what is actual happiness, which, bliss, real bliss is about knowing your purpose in life. Real bliss is about knowing your meaning. Real bliss is about having focus and, having a goal, and learning how the world really works, and understanding that there's so much more to the picture than just what we've been fed by the indoctrination our whole life. Okay, so we got to get this idea out of our head and move in the direction of evolution. True bliss is evolution in the self, in consciousness. So if we're going to understand this word ignorance, or ignorant, better, we're going to have to understand this first compound word called ignore. Okay, and most people know what this word means. It means to refuse to take notice of or acknowledge, disregard, intentionally. So this is about, willfully choosing to not engage with something or to not look into something, right? And if we're going to understand this word better, it's always good to look into synonyms of words. Okay, so synonyms are basically words that are alike to the word that you're looking into. So the words that are alike with ignore are snub, brush aside, brush off, discount, dismiss, neglect, pay no attention to, overlook, pass over, shut your eyes to, turn a blind eye to. Okay? So now we're going to look up the etymology of this word ignorant. And it's always important to look into the etymology of words because the etymology is about getting back to the root or the origin of a word, the original intent of a word. So that way you have a better understanding of what the word was originally meant to be, right? So the word ignorant comes from the Latin verb ignorare, meaning not to know, take no notice of, or pay no attention to, right? So I want you to really pay attention to what that first part says. Not to know, but then it says pay no attention to, which means that's refusing to look at something that is actually there. So that means ignorant means to ignore reachable knowledge, knowledge that is attainable, knowledge that actually is around, knowledge that can be found. There is a refusal to look into that. Okay? So that's what being ignorant truly means from its etymological standpoint, which is what the original intent is meant to be. Okay? Now, what are the synonyms of this word? There's unaware, unlearned, uneducated, unknowing, unknowledgeable, unread, neglect, pay no attention to, overlook, pass over, shut your eyes to, turn a blind eye to. Okay? And there's more, but it's these words are helping us understand this word better, right? Now, another word that we should pay attention to is this word nescience. When we're looking at the word ignorant, nescience should also be in our vocabulary to help us understand that, nescience comes from the Latin ne, which means not, and sciere, science, comes from scere, meaning to know. Okay, so you could say instead of nescience, you just try to remember ne science. Not any science, not any knowledge, not any knowing of knowledge. So it's a lack of knowledge. That's what nescience means. It means that knowledge is not attainable. It's not around. It can't be found, and therefore there's ignorance. There's a not knowing because there is no access to the knowledge. Okay? So, and one thing to also keep in mind is it might be because we just don't have the knowledge in general in the whole world, or the knowledge has been sequestered or hidden on purpose to, for people who are, the dominators in this world who maintain a power differential of knowledge over the rest of the people. So you can still be nescient even when the knowledge is within the world, but, not when the knowledge is present. That would be ignorance. Okay. So just to understand these two words a little easier, they're both the state of not knowing, right? So ignorance is to not know because it's about refusing reachable knowledge. To not know because the knowledge has been refused. To not know because the knowledge, the attainable knowledge, is being refused, right? And then nescience is about no reachable knowledge. It just isn't there. It's not present. It's not around. Okay? So it's really important that we understand these two words as behaviors of ourselves to recognize that there's a choice with ignorance and there's no choice with nescience. All right. Now, what I'm going to share here is just a refresher of the trivium. So, the trivium is it means where three roads meet. All right. So, it's all about understanding how the input, the processing, and the output of information is all together creates illumination. So taking in knowledge, all right, taking the input of knowledge, the input of the grammar, the input of information is taken into ourselves, and then we are to process that information by looking at the inconsistencies in that knowledge or information and finding out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And then once we come to an understanding of that information, then comes the output of rhetoric, how we speak and put the information out. It's the action. It is the wisdom, right? Wisdom is speaking what we understand, what we know and what we understand, okay? And this is very, very important before I go into the next slides, okay? So this is the threefold path towards truth, because it's about opening your eye to truth. And this piece right here is a piece that I created earlier this year that I'm actually calling the Trivium of Ignorance in this episode, okay? So basically, you have three aspects of consciousness, or three aspects lacking consciousness, really. But basically, these are the parts of the emotion and R complex, the emotional part of the brain and the lower fight or flight part of the brain controlling how we behave, that really keeps our mind in a cage, okay? So the three ways that people behave when information is present, when information is attainable, they won't look into the information, they won't see the information, they won't look any further into information that has been brought to them. A person of ignorance, because we have to think about this in the trivium process, because it is where the three roads do not meet, right? So it's a separation. Ignorance is a willful separation from knowledge. So you could look at these three bars of this, prison cell. You could look at them as three roads, three separate roads that don't meet. They're separate from each other. So this being won't look into the knowledge. They won't think or listen internally with their heart and mind to the information. They won't process it. They won't contemplate on the information. And then this is a being that won't speak about the information or the knowledge. This is someone who won't talk about the information because they don't want to think about the information, or maybe they are someone who has thought about these things, but then they're too cowardly to actually talk about them because of, they're afraid of what people will think. So these little, reddish mitten hands that you see that are coming from the bottom of the beings, the back of their heads, these are the hands of fear coming from the R complex. So it's the fear to look. It's the fear to think. It's the, because even with the hands over the ears, that's also akin to hands over the hemispheres or the mind, right? The brain. So it means to not think or to not listen, right? And then this is a being that won't speak. They cover their mouth symbolically, and they won't speak up about the things that truly matter, or they won't speak to try to understand things in general. So this is where the three roads don't meet. So you could also look at it as it's the refusal to look into information. It's the refusal to think or process or listen to the information internally. It's the refusal to speak up or to talk things out. Now, avoiding ignorance is avoiding necessary information, knowledge, and the opportunity to learn and expand in consciousness. That's what this is about, you know. When information is that is necessary, especially dealing with the human condition, is brought to someone's feet right in front of them, they just, avoid the learning process, the process of growth, because what we're ignorant of, obviously we can't be omniscient beings, therefore we're going to be ignorant of things that are around. We can't be omniscient. We can't be all-knowing, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that, when necessary knowledge is available, if we're not even attempting to look into it, we are being ignorant and we're allowing suffering to take place. That's really what it's about. Because the human condition is an umbrella of suffering and, things that are, and it's not all suffering. I mean, it's not all darkness. I mean, there's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of positive, but, this is about understanding why the world is so dark. So, when critical information is present, one willfully chooses to ignore it. They are ignorant. Okay, so if the information has to do with the state of the human condition, the choice is to always look away. Always stick your head in the sand. That's what people do. And they don't want anything to do with any of that information. They don't want responsibility. And that's really what it's about. People don't want to be accountable. So even if the information is looked at, there is no attempt to think logically in order to understand what is truly going on. And once one has ignored the knowledge or refused to listen to the information when they have, then they have nothing to say. They have nothing to say at all. They keep their mouth shut and stay silent. And I know so many people that are like this, and they are so unconscious of the fact that that is generating more suffering. It is adding to the suffering of the human condition. So that brings me to the next slide, which is where does ignorance lead us to? Individually and collectively. It leads us to slavery. And I'm not talking just, chattel slavery. I'm talking about all forms of slavery. Mental slavery, spiritual slavery, all forms of slavery. Okay? That's where ignorance leads us to. Not nescience, ignorance. Okay? Now, nescience can lead us to slavery if we were like chattel slavery. The black slaves, they, a lot of them didn't have access to knowledge. Therefore, they couldn't know. And, the people who were their slave masters, they, they were the ones that were completely guilty and responsible for the suffering of those people. But in today's world, we are also responsible. because we have the ability to break out of these mental shackles. Okay. And by slavery, the degrees of slavery build the degrees of suffering. And this is essentially what leads to genocide, because all through history, all governments eventually lead to genocide, lead to mass slaughter, whether that genocide is over a lengthy time period or, all at once. And as you see in this photo, it looks like it happened pretty much all at once. So, people even have the knowledge. They have seen, they have done research, or just have even just a little bit of an understanding of what happened in Nazi Germany, something we're shown all the time, right? And you have, I'm sure most people have seen all the destruction from the government of that time period. But some of the other time periods that were really not shown, and we should question that, is what happened in Red China under Mao Zedong, or what happened in Soviet Russia under Stalin and Lenin. We have to understand this is where government leads to when it becomes super tyrannical, which it inevitably will at some point. This is the result. So genocide is a result of, suffering and slavery of the mass population, which is the result of ignorance. Ignorance not just on the people, but ignorance on the dominators of this world, because they're ignorant. They don't realize that they're going to have karmic consequence for what they've done. So this is my this is what I have to say to everybody. Okay? Most people. Not everybody, but most people. Most of us need to get our heads completely out of the ass lodge. Okay? Unlodge your head out of your ass and into the spiritual lodge of life. Right? Get into the real, the universal lodge. Get your head raised out of darkness and into light. That's what it's about. Okay? We really have to take ourselves more serious in our inner work and how we are going to accomplish freedom, how we're going to get closer to freedom. Okay? If we truly care, but we got to find our care. And we got to, get our heads out of our butt cheeks, out of this dark crack that most of us find ourselves in. And one of the ways that we can do that is go to conferences like this. This is a conference that I'm actually going to be giving a presentation at. I was invited to the Trivium, which is the third funnel conference, Freedom Under Natural Law. And it is taking place live on the internet, June 24th through the 25th of this year, 2023. So it's a free online event for critical thinking and manifesting freedom. And that's what it's all about. And I assure you, if you don't know about the Trivium and you go to that conference, you will come out very educated after that conference, because I'm sure everybody's going to talk about the Trivium, including myself. So, and everybody's going to bring their own unique version of the Trivium, of course. I'm sure they will. It's not going to sound completely all alike, but either way, there's definitely a lot to learn. And another conference coming up is Seed 5, and the big name for this conference is Metamorphosis. And as you can see in the image, this is an actual drawing that I did for Brandon Martin, who is putting this whole conference together. And I've actually helped him with all the other seed conferences, and they are really awesome. And you can go find all those conferences at seedtruth.com, where you can find more about this conference. And as you can see, this is a very amazing list of speakers that are going to be presenting. And all the both conferences, I'm going to be giving presentations, but I am not ready to reveal the title of my presentations yet. That's something that I'll do here pretty soon. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And if you'd like to learn more about any of the topics that you hear on these shows, you can go to cubbyhole.com, start at podcast number 1, work your way forward. And also you can go find me on Telegram under Outcasting with Nate Cap, where I do weekly posts, weekly videos, and I share a lot of, critical information through there. So that being said, thank you for making it this far, and I really hope that I inspired you with this type of information, and I will see you guys again soon.